it's like a ladder in a sense. Like there's one obstacle and you got to find somewhere to play. You got to find a good coach, because if you're not getting good coaching, really, how much are you going to develop?
Yeah.
You got to find good competition to play against. Like it almost seems like there's just obstacle after obstacle that you just got to keep, breaking through, where that's not always the case for most kids.
Facts. Yeah, and I think that, it makes kids that come from these types of programs even stronger when they're going to college. Is, they've already seen everything by the time they're 18, and going to college and making that adjustment, it's not their first time out of the nest. Maybe, they've been able to see adversity and overcome adversity. So going to college and, 6 a.m. lifting and doing all the stuff that entails in college baseball, I've faced worse adversity than ever playing in the game, right? What some of our kids have. So I think that, it's a unique angle, and that's something that I taught when I do talk to coaches that are recruiting our guys. It's like, we have guys that are gritty, they have a little bit of grittiness, a little bit of edge. And I think that it is a benefit of some of the programs like ours. And one thing that we've tried to do as well, and something we've seen over the past year, just with the success of what we've done so far, is there have been suburban families that have really liked the idea of having their kid play on a diverse team, right? And understanding just all the issue. My thought is all the issues in the world come down to people who actually communicate, or people hate people they don't even know, which is crazy. But and it's hard for me to turn the kid down and say, well, you come from a suburban family and you want to be in this environment. You can't do it because you're white. Something like that. I can't do that, right? But I think it creates so many positive things. Like,
you kind of have to change the narrative and make baseball cool in certain areas where it's just not cool. Like where I live at, baseball is cool as hell. Everybody plays. That's why I just got back from. It was like, hey, coach, you got some times in? Like, yeah, it's cool. But if I drive down to where I'm from in Philly, it's like when I used to come home, wearing a baseball uniform, for me, like yo, I was embarrassed. Like I was low key embarrassed because I was like, what are my friends going to think? Like the whole socks and stirrups and like baseball pants in North Philly, like that ain't cool, right? But now, like when I was young and I was still living at my mom's house, when I first started coaching in college, I remember driving up to her crib, listening to Kenny Chesney, because I had been, cultured, I had been seasoned, I had been around different people. And at that point, I was like, yo, who cares what people think? But when you're dealing with, 7-year-olds and teenagers, are they going to be able to tell their homies, yeah, I play baseball? How cool is that sound? Right? At an age in a generation where everybody's about the likes and the hits and this is cool. So I think it's just like we got to make baseball cool again. They need to see more Andrew McCutcheons. They need to see more guys that look like them. And it starts like high school and in college, and they need to see that you can be cool, you can have tattoos and be black and coach, and it can be the coolest thing in the world.
Particularly African-American kids just don't see baseball as a viable option to get to whatever that is. They can turn on a television and see LeBron James and 75% of the NBA African-American, or, 80% of the NFL being African-American. But, one, you got to search just to find baseball on television. And then what are the odds that you're going to see African-American guy on TV? And then, I think the other thing there too is, if you don't see it as a viable option, and for some kids that have they've only ever played different sports, maybe football, basketball, the athleticism factor can shine through in those sports, even with minimal skill coaching, right? If you're 7 foot tall, you're 6'8", you can succeed in basketball, even if you don't have the best skill coaching in the world, versus, as we all know, in baseball, it's very difficult if you don't have a hitting coach, a pitching coach, a throwing program, these different things. It's very, very difficult to succeed. And so I think that, a lot of kids just don't see it as a viable option. I can go shoot hoops down at the park. It's very difficult to, pick up a group of friends and go to the local, field and hit when it's freezing cold, or you have to have a permit to get on the field, or the gates are locked, or, in Pittsburgh, all of our city fields are like landmines and you're gonna get hit in the face, taking ground balls and stuff. So yeah, I completely agree with Andre. And I do think that just seeing the game as a viable option is something that we can continue to improve through programs like this, through doing, live streams and things like we're doing right now. It's just have kids understand that, try baseball. It might be something that fits for you. So the more awareness that we can spread about the game and the fun that the game actually has, I think the better that we can continue to grow the game in these communities.
Speak specifically, like when I was at Penn State, and Dan, like Penn State is as white as can be, like when it comes to Central PA, right? That's cool. Like, so when they see me, they're like, oh, you must be on a football team, right? So like we had 4 black kids on the team at one time. You know what I mean? Like those dudes were pretty good.
Oh yeah.
So I think it just has to be like you had to just be intentional about it and know that it might not happen every year. But I look at some programs, I'm like, I'll go down a roster, I'm like, wait, y'all haven't had a black kid or any kid of color within 10 years? Like come on, that's just like not even trying, so you kind of have to use what you have. And then when coaches hear that, like, don't think it's just saying like, oh, well, this is supposed to be about winning, we just want more black kids. Like, no, it's not that. It's just saying like, make the initiative to recruit kids who look different, kids who come from different cultures. Because when I talk about recruiting, first question I asked, I said, when was the time you dealt with adversity, right? And then I said, when was a time where, like, talk to me about someone on your team who's completely different than you and comes from something, like a different background. And if that gets off to race, I let them go there. If it gets off to types of music that they listen to, I let them go there, right? Because I think what we're seeing in society is like everybody wants to kind of huddle in their same pack, where the more we allow our youth, our children to do that, the more we realize how we screw the world up. Like, this ain't about baseball. Like, the more we realize how we screw the world up when they're like 21, 22, and they gotta get a job, right? And their CEO, their boss looks different than them. So I think that's where coaches just kind of gotta come in and do their part and be like, look, we struck out this year. There wasn't any black kids that were for us, but maybe next year. Or maybe the next year. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
It's just getting the kids on the radar. And that's why I thought it was so important. What our program last year, no kid paid more than $300. And that was for all of their training, for all of their travel, for, getting them to different events and doing things of that nature. So obviously very cheap. And, we have to hustle for money and make partnerships like with your organization in order to get them to events. But the thing that was so important for us, why reaching out to you, is I want a kid in our program, it's just the way it is. Someone says, oh, this kid's pretty good at baseball, I'm going to search Andre Butler prep baseball report, and I want our kids to have that same opportunity that all the other kids have, to be on the radar, to be evaluated, that people are aware of the kids, and that they have, people could take my word. I think most people take my word, I'm pretty honest, but to have an independent source validating these players and seeing what they're doing is so helpful for them and gets them on that radar. And, the point that you're talking about with kids that are just talented, that are out there, I've told you about this kid, but I won't say his name, but, there's a kid we met a year ago who had never played anything besides rec ball. And then, I truly believe he's one of the best players in the state, if not the country, with a year of training and being in a program and actually getting that high level training and being allowed to have opportunity and access to different resources, goes from a kid who knows where he would have ended up. I mean, he's so talented. Maybe he would have shown through and got opportunity in college to, now there's, 3 weeks ago, we had the Brewers at our practice to watch him, and so it's just, I think the opportunity, the access, and getting those guys on the radar and seeing their, tweet about them from PBR, seeing their stuff on social media and stuff, really begins to create some buzz and excitement about those kids. And then it brings, more people to say, well, hey, this kid's here. Who else is in the city?
Diversity camp, or whatever type of camp for underprivileged, for a type of person that is not in the game like myself. Like, it doesn't, people in the game don't look like myself and Nelson. If I saw that on Twitter or anything on social media, I would automatically say, Mom, like, we got to go to this. We got to go to this. And if I'm a college coach, white or black, I'm like, wait, like, I got to go to this, right? At an affordable price for the kids, of course. But I think what we're seeing now in society in general, like moves have to be made that have never been made before, period. Right? Like, it's okay to talk about what, like, the pink elephant in the room, right? Like, we've seen it with the player lines. It's not even called the MLB player lines. Like, if you Google MLB, because it's not MLB, it's the players. It's solely the players. Where before, I think I've talked to Major League Baseball guys who have been told by other black guys in the league, like, hey man, like, don't go there yet. Like, don't go with the diversity thing yet. And I believe it. Like, I know, like, because you fight so hard to make it to the big leagues. It's like, wait a minute, you come in the locker room talking like, well, we gotta like act different now. So, but now the first time in our life that we're seeing people say, hey, like, this is okay, and like, we're gonna just like pour it out. And it doesn't mean that like we don't care about other kids either. It just means that it would be different if this was football, right? If this is football, we're like, hey, we're gonna have a diversity. We're gonna have a black camp for football, right? That's different. Black kids play football all the time. But in a sport like baseball and the history of the Negro Leagues and Jackie Robinson and what we've just seen in our sport for years and years and in our world, like, this is something that's very important where we can say, hey, y'all can keep, like, we want y'all to play. We giving y'all a platform to say, hey, show up. And if you're good, you're good. And if you're not so good, you're going to, be not so good. But we're going to give you the opportunity.
They don't have a Nelson who wants to spend his time making no money helping kids, right? And doesn't, I don't get paid. I do it because I'm 26 now. And if someone was there when I was 15 to help me and my mom, if someone wasn't there, should I say, maybe I wouldn't be in the same position I'm here today, right? We were able to get helped. And so I think just finding those individuals who are willing to grow the game, who are willing to train kids, willing to sacrifice their time, effort, and energy to really impact the lives of children through the game of baseball. And that's why I kind of think what we're doing is mentoring, right? And the long-term goal is to get them into college, graduate from college, because there's a lot of positive outcomes that come from college graduation. And using baseball, and eventually we want to use softball as well. We're not there yet, using that as the conduit to do so. And so there's a resource gap there. And I think I wish there was a simple response, right, for all of this. There's so many different things, and there's so many different parts that you could target to start beginning to address the inequalities that exist within the recruiting landscape in the world, and the inequalities that exist just generally playing the game. But, as André just said, you got to start somewhere. You got to do something. And so doing something and taking some action, no matter what it is, if it's an individual that's watching this and say, hey, I'm going to go work out with those two kids and help them out, bring them to the gym and help them. Hey, that's two kids that may have not gotten any opportunity just from you. So it doesn't need to be always a large scale program, 1,500 kids, that and the rest. But if each individual is taking a little step in action to helping one other kid, helping a few kids, we can really begin to move this forward.
I was coaching at University of Penn in the Ivy League. Like, every year we had what we called Youth Day, and it was just open to the youth, right? Like, there's more programs in college baseball whose tickets for games are just free than programs who have to pay $6, right? So when I was at Penn, it was nothing to come to a ball game, right? So we would do community outreach and say, hey, bring your team to Youth Day. And we would get like 10 different organizations. We would have the Philly Fanatic there. Like, it was a blast. It was awesome. And for our guys, like, it's probably the biggest crowd we've ever had, right? So this literally costs you nothing but time. For a college coach or even a high school coach, Say, hey, figure out the blackest travel ball team, youth team in your area, and say, yo, we got Princeton next week. Why don't you guys come down? And then get more kids, and then get more kids, and get more kids, and then start making this an event. Look, I used to, when I was back when I was the volunteer at Penn State, like I would just reach out to people and said, come to our games. Please come to our game. We need to fill seats. Come to our game. They're free. High school kids, it's free.
Tend to want to be the only one or be the exclusive or something of that nature. Hey, I want to take credit for getting this kid recruited. Where I think of it as, this is a partnership. We all have to work together if we're really looking out for the betterment of the youth. It's great. I appreciate being on the call and being able to speak, but I like it more if our kids are out there. That's what the main goal of what we're trying to do. And I understand that you have to do a certain amount of press to get it out there, but I think a partnership in doing that and working with you all, we use our own channels to get, just coaches that we know and get guys on the radar. But the more that you can grow, partner with other organizations that are looking to do the same for kids, the better it is for our youth.